Welcome to Pennsylvania Newsmakers, and as always, thanks for watching. Well, it's time for an important update on roads and bridge repairs. We've had a record amount of money spent on projects throughout the last couple of years. But first, let's get to the big stories of the week, and as they say, let's get to it.
This is Pennsylvania Newsmakers, a fast-paced, unrehearsed weekly discussion with and about the leaders who shape your world. And now, here's your host, Terry Madonna.
Well, here we go. We've got a couple of huge stories that we need to report to you, and joining me to do that, as often is the case, a couple of the state's leading reporters. Sitting across from me is John Micek. He's the editor-in-chief of the Pennsylvania Capital Star, and Charlie Thompson. He's a Capitol reporter, and he does other reporting as well with the Harrisburg Patriot News PennLive. Gentlemen, thank you for joining me, as often is the case.
Oh, sure.
All right. Now, Charlie, the legislature's gone for the summer. They may have some committee hearings, so it's a little quiet over on Capitol Hill. But there is still a story that seems to have legs. It won't go away. It has to do with $90 million that Governor Wolf wanted to borrow. We'll see what he did. You'll tell me in a minute.
Yeah.
$90 million bucks. We have to upgrade the voting machines in our state to get what's referred to as a verifiable paper trail. So you just can't have them all in electronics and computers where they could be, what's the word, hacked?
Right.
Take it. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Where does that all stand now?
Well, the one thing that I think we can say with certainty is that we are going to get new voting machines generally across Pennsylvania for the 2020 elections. This is the result of DHS edicts and court settlements that Governor Wolf has combined to make Governor Wolf mass decertify voting machines across the state. And it's a tab that costs maybe about $150 million. They're projecting for all the counties to
67
replace.
counties.
And the question was, to the counties, they were saying, well, this is an unfunded mandate that the governor has placed on us.
Yeah.
We need state funding help, or else property taxes are going to go up. And so that set in motion this quest to try to find some funding for voting machines in this year's budget process. They settled on a plan to float a bond issue to pay part of the cost of the voting machines, about $90 million. Yeah. And but along the way to getting that plan to Governor Wolf's desk, the legislature inserted an amendment, an election reform amendment that would have done away with straight party balloting, automatic straight party balloting. And Wolf, that became incredibly unpopular with Democratic lawmakers, especially Democratic lawmakers in the cities. And Wolf vetoed the bill largely on that front. And so that threw the $90 million pot back up into the air. The most recent development is that Wolf has declared that he would issue bonds kind of unilaterally through the Pennsylvania Economic Development Financing Authority, a little noted bond issuing.
But Republicans have...
They were incandescent with rage is probably the best way of putting it.
Are they going to go to court on this?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, they figure for this kind of appropriation that Wolf needs to get legislative authorization. And when the governor came out the other day and announced that he was going to use this bond issue to, and I think it reimburses counties about 65% of the cost.
60%.
60% of the cost of the voting machines. Republicans went bananas. They said, you have to come back and get legislative authorization for this. Things were a little strained coming out of the end of the budget cycle between the administration and the legislature to begin with. So you'll see this issue probably litigated throughout the summer. But I mean, what the fact remains, Terry, is the counties need this financial assistance. I think 30 of 67 counties have replaced their voting machines, but there's still the other half that are out there that need to do this.
But the point is, if it's a state mandate, Charlie, shouldn't the state? I mean, shouldn't the state pick up the cost for it if the state is saying?
Well,
if they're saying do it, counties.
Yeah, you would think so. I mean, there's a small pot of federal money that's available, and if the state comes through with the $90 million, then something like 3/4 of the cost would be funded, and the county would pay about 25%. That's kind of a classic matching grant scenario.
Okay.
But the issue of where the money is going to come from has just left a lot of kind of unrest.
Believe it or not, we're almost out of time for this segment. But John, we have probably two hot congressional races, one in the Philadelphia suburbs in Bucks County and one in South Central PA. Let's run to a break. When we come back, I want to talk about the importance of that race, and we have a pretty big name opponent to the current incumbent Congressman Perry in the 10th Congressional District.
Indeed we do.
We'll get to that after these words.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by the Pennsylvania Chamber of Business and Industry, the statewide voice of business, and by the Pennsylvania State Education Association and Partners for Public Education, bringing the power of a great education to our schools, our students, and our communities. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by the Pennsylvania Highway Information Association, the go-to source to learn about transportation projects and issues. Please visit pahighwayinfo.org. And by the Pennsylvania Manufacturers Association. Business in Pennsylvania is our business.
Charlie Thompson and John Micek, reporters, join me. We're chatting about a number of important issues. Well, we're going to soon, believe it or not, John Micek, it seems like we're already into the 2020.
Haven't we had the election yet?
Congressional races, and we got one hot one here in South Central Pennsylvania. Take it.
Indeed we do. Terry, Republican Scott Perry, a four-term incumbent, if I'm doing the math correctly, in the newly redrawn 10th Congressional District, which is Dauphin, York, Cumberland County. Right. Now facing, it looks like, a very stiff Democratic opponent, stiff challenge rather, in Democratic Auditor General Eugene DePasquale, who finally quelled weeks and weeks of speculation by announcing about a week or so back that he planned to seek the
that he wasn't
nomination.
going to run for governor.
Well, I mean, everybody mentioned that he was going to run for governor. There have been equal amounts of speculation that he was going to run for Congress. He opted for Congress. The Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee has gotten behind DePasquale's candidacy. He's sort of the establishment safe pick. He has statewide name recognition. He has an ability to raise money. He can get on the air fairly quickly. He has a vigorous social media presence. So he is now sort of viewed as kind of the putative front-runner in this race. We'd be remiss, though, if we didn't mention that a young man named Tom Breyer, a 27-year-old attorney from Hershey, Pennsylvania, Dickinson Law School graduate, is also in the running. He stopped by the Capitol Star's offices just this week to chat with our Stephen Caruso. Very ambitious,
and you think he's going to stay in the race?
He seems to have the organization. He's got an army of young people that he's enlisted in his cause. He started showing up all over Facebook a few weeks back. So he knows how to leverage that part of the campaign. I think, though, it will be prohibitive, given just sort of DePasquale's organization and capacity to raise money for him.
Tough. Now, this is going to be, first of all, one of the most watched congressional races in the country. That's point number one. Point number two, since the district was changed, it includes all of Dauphin County that has been trending Democratic, particularly in statewide and national elections. Do I got that about right?
Yeah, I think that for those of us that kind of work that ground regularly, I think
you mean politics, and more politics,
especially South Central Pennsylvania. I think we felt that the potential was there for that race to be competitive in 2018, and I felt like a lot of people nationally didn't quite see that, but it did wind up being a very hotly contested race.
Perry only won by 3 points.
Yeah, George Scott, the Democratic pastor, minister, Army veteran, kind of central casting, 2.7%, very close.
Right, and that was his first run for office, and you bring in a guy who's got the name recognition and the experience of Eugene DePasquale and the attention of the national donor base and so forth, and you know that Scott Perry has a fight on his hands. I mean, I wouldn't say it'll be a contested race, though, because the district, as it has been recast by the Supreme Court, is still a 9-10 point plus Republican district as measured by the 2016 presidential results. So, Perry's got that, and he proved that. I think he proved that he, after many one-sided races for the state house and for Congress, he proved that he could get out there and fight a hot
Perry messed up last cycle. He woke up late in that campaign. He erred by not taking George Scott seriously. And so he came to that comparably late. They woke up and realized that they looked at the polling data and realized they had an actual challenge on their hands. Perry historically has trouble fundraising as well, so I'll be curious to see how that maybe hampers him in a race against DePasquale. It's going to be a heck of a contest.
Yeah, nationally watched. All right, I want to get to one more topic at least. Cash assistance, it was ended. This is a program that goes to, I'll say, the poor, folks who can't work. I didn't even think it was that controversial, but yet it's over.
Well, I mean, Governor Wolf and the Democrat Governor Tom Wolf and the Republican-led General Assembly have had a series of clashes over welfare reform ever since Wolf took office. A lot of them having to do with should there be work requirements for medical assistance and that sort of thing. And this was kind of the welfare reform battle of the year.
What's the cash assistance program? Tell our viewers.
It is a small cash stipend of averaging about $200 a month, I believe, and maybe that's I think that's the average.
Yeah.
For people who are,
infirmed or they're
and sometimes often waiting for other longer-term assistance programs. It's kind of a bridge program. And people use it for sundry expenses. The fellow that spoke about it at the Capitol talked about using it for quarters for laundry machines and bus fare.
It's a very small population. It's only about 11,000 people statewide.
I didn't think it was that controversial.
It's people who are struggling with addiction. It's people who are fleeing domestic violence. This law got knocked down. They repealed it in 2012. The state Supreme Court reinstated it in 2018, ruling that it had been unconstitutionally eliminated. So it had been in place for about a year. And you wouldn't think that it's not that controversial. The Republicans have sort of this issue with a direct cash payment. They would rather see it channeled out in some other ways. They have argued that other existing state programs for domestic violence survivors and that kind of thing will help this population. But it was a very emotional battle.
All right, we're out of time. I want to thank you for the update. All right, talk about updates, about transportation. You can't go about a mile in any direction in our state and not find some kind of road and bridge construction. It's very important. Bob Latham joins me. We'll get to that after these words.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by the Pennsylvania Credit Union Association. Pennsylvania Credit Unions, where people are worth more than money. To find a credit union that is right for you, check out ibelong.org. And by the Energy Association of Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania's energy information source. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by the Association of Pennsylvania State College and University Faculties, representing the faculty and coaches who are devoted to providing quality public higher education for Pennsylvania's college students.
Bob Latham joins me. He's the Executive Vice President with the Associated Pennsylvania Constructors. I'll tell you, Bob, as I joke about it, but it's true and it's important. You can't drive a mile in any direction and not find road repairs, bridge give our viewers an overview of what's going on with all of the construction.
Sure, Terry. Repairs is the key word. Repairing the existing system. We put a lot of money into transportation and highway projects over the last several years. We had the funding bill a number of years ago. We've cut our inventory of bad bridges in half from 6,000 to 3,000. So we fixed a lot of bridges. But the thing is, we're not building new roads. We're fixing the ones we have, and that's important to understand because in Pennsylvania we have weather situations. We have an old system, we have freeze-thaw, we've had a lot of rain the last couple of years. That's impacting our ability to put money on the existing roads because we've had to take some of the road money and put it into flood repairs and other things like that. So while we've had a record amount of money going into road rehabilitation projects over the last several years, we're starting to see some of these financial pressures eat in and kind of cut that back a little bit.
But I don't think there's any doubt that if we don't, when we talk about road and bridge repairs, it seems to me there are two elements in it. One is safety, and that's the most important, and the other one is the economy. You can't have a healthy economy, a vibrant economy, if you have a road and bridge system that's not, that you can't get around it, that's not modernized.
Look at the changes in how we purchase goods and look at some of the corridors in Pennsylvania, where Interstate 81 corridor, 78 corridor through the central part of the state, which is the gateway from New York, New Jersey ports down into the rest of the country. It used to be complete farmland along there, and every 2 miles now is a 1 million or 2 million square foot distribution center. So that's putting a lot of trucks on the road. That's putting a lot of pressure on our system.
Great point.
And so we're looking at how do we keep up with that. And so as a result, because there's only a finite amount of money that was passed in the transportation bill, PennDOT is now moving some of those funds off of rural and local projects onto the interstates because, as the viewers probably note, when they drive our interstates, they're in pretty bad shape and they need to be fixed up.
Yeah, but the bigger problem, it seems to me, is there are monies that was appropriated through the gasoline tax, supposed to go to road and bridge repair, some of it is being diverted to other causes.
That's one of the kind of the bad little secrets in Pennsylvania. You hear that we have the highest gas tax in the country, which we do. Unfortunately, about 25% of that, the equivalent of about 12 cents a gallon, is actually going into the state's general fund. Now, it's appropriated there for funding the state police, but it's really just a matter of propping up the general fund. And then on top of that, we've seen about $150 million now siphoned off for a program called Real ID. That's a Homeland Security mandate from the federal government that the legislature and the administration agreed to have funded out of the state's gas tax. So we continue to see pressures where we're taking money out of road repair opportunities and putting it into other things. Now the General Assembly is slowly rolling back this state police diversion, but we'd like to see it in a much more rapid fashion.
So the real problem, well, let's run to a break. I want to get to the real problem. All right, we'll get to another subject after these words.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by the Pennsylvania Medical Society. Inspired physicians committed to the good health of Pennsylvanians and the advancement of the practice of medicine. And by the Pennsylvania Healthcare Association, the future of long-term care.
Welcome back. Bob Latham with the Associated Pennsylvania Constructors joins me. We're talking about all things transportation. Now, let me get to this quickly. The issue here isn't the appropriate funding for the state police and for Real ID. That's not the issue. All right, let me put it this way. The issue isn't should the state police be funded. We'd all agree they should be. The question is, should the legislature be taking money that was appropriated and when the voters agreed to hike the gasoline tax to go for roads and bridge repair, and it's being siphoned off. Is that the fundamental problem?
Of course, that's a fundamental problem. We're not arguing over the budget for the police. It's a very important program. It's a crucial safety and security program for the Commonwealth, but how you pay for it is really the issue. Same way with Real ID. It's very important for Homeland Security. How do you pay for it? It's a federal mandate, but that again eats into our ability to continue to repair our existing road system. Talking
about the federal government, does the federal government has an important role in transportation funding? Absolutely. So. One thing we need to realize is that about 40% of the money that we put into road repairs and transportation, and I'm talking about public transit as well here, comes from something called the Highway Trust Fund in Washington. So you do pay federal gas tax on top of your state gas tax. Now that hasn't been addressed really in earnest for about 20 years. They keep propping it up. What we're hearing now is that while some members of Congress are looking at potential ways to enhance the Highway Trust Fund in Washington, we're not really seeing anything
solid, if you will, coming out of Washington.
Right.
We participated with freshman Congresswoman Houlihan recently in Reading at a press conference, and she made a plea for investment in infrastructure. So we are seeing that as a popular program with some members, but on the leadership side, not really seeing anything. And when we passed the state funding bill in 2013, we were hopeful that about the other third of the need that was expressed would be filled by Washington. We haven't seen it.
I can't imagine of all what state and local and the federal government does. I mean, it seems to me that having a modern infrastructure is so important.
Well, since we passed our bill in 2013, about 25 states have picked up the ball and done it at the state level because the federal government really just isn't helping out. So hopefully at some point they will. The president ran on it in 2016. We haven't seen anything since.
The future with automobiles may be electric vehicles. There's no doubt about that, and there's this debate over carbon emissions, and we'll skip that for the moment. That's an important debate, and it should be discussed. But the fact of the matter is that an electric car still has the same impact. Finish my sentence on
the condition of the roads. They're not so much not even the cars, but also electric trucks. I mean, this is technology that's coming. Battery technology is coming. It's a market-based thing as much as it is an environmental thing. So. So we will see more and more vehicles powered by, not by diesel fuel or by gasoline. And so our whole funding mechanism is based on fossil fuel consumption. And as we move to other sources of energy for us powering vehicles, we have to find a new way to have those vehicles pay for their fair share of the roadway.
So what you're saying is electric vehicles. The money comes from purchasing. The money that goes into roads and bridges comes from buying gasoline, and the tax that gets paid. If you have electric vehicles, then
if you have an all-electric vehicle right now, you pay zero road user fee. Now there is legislation that's been introduced by Representative Mike Carroll from Wilkes-Barre that would address that. It's out on the House floor. Basically, it introduces a $150 a year registration fee, which is really far less than what someone who drives a car pays in gas taxes. But it's a start, so that we would start to introduce some parity, some fairness there for those vehicles that are using the roads that aren't buying gasoline. Eventually, we'll probably have to go to some sort of mileage-based fee, but that's been something that's been talked about for decades, but still really isn't on the horizon.
Well, I want to thank you for coming in. I mean, this is a really important update, and it's hard to think of another subject right now. There are many other subjects of similar importance, but boy, roads and bridge construction and repairs, very important.
Well, everybody uses the system.
All right, we'll see you next week for another edition of Pennsylvania Newsmakers, and as always, stay well.